Hey, how's it going? I'm going to have you look at some signs, and then I'm going to talk about a show called The OA. So, I have been kind of looking for something in particular to watch. And I have a lot of choices, like us all, but sometimes I'm in the mood for a certain thing. So, for some reason, it occurred to me to check out some shows that were on the old WB network, like around the Arrowverse era. And one of those shows that I hadn't watched it at all was the OA, and it had like such a weird looking title too. I guess it kind of put me off, but it's like it's like the and then O with a slash and then A, and I don't know why, but I would just look at that and go, I don't think that's for me. I didn't even know what it meant. So I just decided that I was gonna look into the older shows on the WB, and I really like it. It turns out it's really good. So the problem with it though is that Netflix thing where there's only a few seasons. So this only has 2 seasons, which is a bummer, and it's totally my favorite kind of show. And because it got canceled naturally. All of the shows that I'm really into get canceled. Oh well. Anyway. So the cast had like some people I knew, and not that many, like a couple. One actor I definitely knew, and then another one I have seen for years, but I didn't know him by name. He's a character actor. And the rest of them are kind of all over the place. I'll get to it. So, I like the show because it does like time traveling, sort of. And it's multiverse. So, I kind of am way into that. I had no idea that it was about that, but it starts out and it's about this woman, and she is a child in Russia with her father, and then she grows up and she becomes separated from him, and she's in this terrible accident as a child where she goes blind. And then as an adult, she is adopted by this family in America, and so she doesn't sound Russian anymore, and she loses all of that because they get her when she's about like 5 or 6, and they dote on her and they treat her like she's a total phoebe, which she's not, and they think she has mental illness, but she doesn't. What she does have is, I would call it like dimensional sickness, because she finds herself kind of flopping back and forth. And this is early on in the show, and so I was like, why are there already flashbacks? Nothing happened yet. Hold on a second, I think I have to let my cat out. No, I don't. So, she is with this family, and like I said, they think she's mentally ill because she keeps trying to escape. Like, she wants to get out of the house and go experience the world herself, and she's like creative. She's a musician. Like, she played violin from when she was a child, and like she's an adult, right? She's like well into her 20s at least, and they just keep her locked up in the house, and they don't want to let her go out and go anywhere, which is insane because she's not like I guess she like went out and got into trouble a couple of times, but that's because they never let her out. Like, you gotta go out and make those mistakes and learn. And they're not blind, so I think they were just like overly protective. But she ends up at one point, they put her in a mental hospital. And the guy that is the doctor there is like someone, we find this out later, but he's someone that she's known like in other lifetimes. So I'm not saying reincarnated lives exactly, but they know each other from different universes. And the thing about this guy is he's a research scientist, but he's just kind of rogue on his own. He is working with someone or for someone or something, but at first you don't even see him. Like, he's just like in his house, and he basically lures in subjects for his experiments, and he's trying to figure out how to bring people back from death, but find out like what happened when they were dead. Like, that's what it starts out as. But the whole thing about this show is like all of these people that come together, that he brings together, that he kidnaps basically, and then imprisons and experiments on, are people that recur in the other universes. So it's very much like the Soul Family that I will talk about on here when I'm doing the card readings, or I guess just in general. But in the show, throughout the show, she and one of the other captive patients that she ends up falling in love with. The main character is a woman. Well, when she's in Russia as a child, she's Nina. And then when she gets adopted in America, the adoptive mother calls her Prairie because of her eye color. And one of the other things that was kind of really cool about this movie, or series rather, is that the music. And so they play a lot throughout this song by a band called Live from the 90s. So everybody thought it was Live, but it was actually Live. And the song was Lightning Crashes. And it's very popular. I mean, it's from like over a decade ago, but you are very likely will have heard it. And the lyrics are, he talks about an angel, and he talks about a big storm, and they're very momentous. And I didn't realize, I hadn't heard them all really. Like, you know how you just kind of learn the chorus, or like some line will stick out, but I'm watching this show and it's playing the song at different points, and I was like, oh wow, that's a cool lyric. Oh wow, I didn't even know that was in there. So that's how much attention I pay. But that's not news to me. I was well into my 20s before I understood all of the words in the Rolling Stones songs I'd been hearing my whole life. And I don't know, Mick Jagger's kind of hard to understand sometimes, but neither here nor there. It just is a good song for the story because gradually Prairie, as a prisoner with Homer and Scott, and I didn't put everybody down here. Well, so now I'm going to make it all confusing. In the beginning, when she's a prisoner with Homer and Scott and Rachel and Renata, all people that this doctor, found various places, and he's got them, and you don't know this at first, in Cuba. This is where he's holding the people prisoner, and he's got a plane. So he's snatching them from, like, America and bringing them to Cuba, and then he kept the people for 7 years before they figured out how to escape. And that's, like, a lot of the first many episodes. And it's actually really good suspense, and the way he's keeping them is just, like, barbaric. And it's, once again, one of these brutes that thinks he's doing them good, and you're great, you're better off than you were. Like, they don't even, the walls are see-through. They have no privacy. And the guy's experiments change from whatever he was doing in the first place. It doesn't even really matter, because then he realizes, like, oh, you can die and come back, and when you go, you don't go to, like, heaven or hell or whatever. You just go to a different dimension, which, like, on this ice screen, in reality, that could be a true thing. It just depends on how you perceive it, I guess. But so this guy tortures these people, and the way he does it, like, he thinks he's doing his experiment for posterity or whatever. But what he does is he tricks them, and he lies to them, and he coerces them, and all kinds of stuff. But the thing that's worst about his experiment is that he'll separate one from the group, take them to his weird laboratory, because it's all underground, so nobody can hear him, nobody can see him, and, like, what's happening. And he's got this chair, and he's got, like, he pretty much straps them in, and then, like, the hands are attached to things, some kind of sensors in the feet and whatever, and he kills them over and over. It's crazy. So these prisoner people, they want to get out. They want their lives back. They can't believe, like, they're captive. They want to get the hell out. They want to escape. So they finally figure it out. Like, everybody dies escaping, pretty much. And one thing they figure out while they're there together is how to really shift energy. This is what it looks like they're doing. But they are able to bring someone back from the dead. But they also just come back. And it's like a different times, different things bring them back. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what it is. But they finally learn how to do these moves, they call them. And they learn them, like, when they die before they come back. When they're in this sort of limbo type deal, they either have an experience there or actually speak to someone there, and they come back with scars on their backs. And the scars, when they're examined by the doctors, they have, like, metal in them and stuff, and they're, like, really weird, like, no one knows what they are. And Prairie didn't have them before she went, like, into this thing, before she was kidnapped. And then when she came back finally, when she, like, made it out and was examined by doctors, they're like, where did these scars come from? They thought she was beaten. That's not, she was never beaten. They didn't really go into detail about how the scars were applied, but happened sometime in that limbo period. And there's a lot of, like, weird lights and passing through dimensions, so I don't know. They like I said, they didn't specify, but it could have been some of that, like, burning those into place, or who knows. But Prairie gets it into her head that she's an angel. That, I mean, hard to define and prove an angel on this side of the screen, like right now, for real. But there's certain things that can be found out about them that had nothing to do with how they were in this show, that's for sure. Because the doctor guy, he just learned from them how to do the movements and everything, and then he used that against them. It gave him a reason to keep people longer. I mean, the guy was terrible. But the actor that plays him, Jason Isaacs, I guess that's his brand, because it said that he played also, where is it? Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter, which I didn't see, which is why I'm stumbling over it. But he was also in Star Trek Discovery, and he was like the double agent. He wasn't like for real who he said he was, the Star Trek officer. He was actually posing as a Star Trek officer, but he was like from somewhere else, and he was the enemy. And they canceled that show, and it was so good. Star Trek just can't get a life at CBS, and CBS won't let them go to somebody that won't kill it off, after a few seasons. So annoying. Anyway, I'll have to put that in the info box. Let me just make sure I write it down here. Star Trek Discovery Captain Inbox. Okay. So they go through a lot. They die a bunch of times because this guy kills them and brings them back a bunch of times. But it's not like on Law and Order where somebody gets choked out. I mean, it's dying in a way like that over and over, but there's not a sexual component. Not in that way. The doctor's obsessed with Prairie because he knows she hates him, understandably, because she keeps running across him. He's like following her across the dimensions and just trying to capture her again. And he's like in love with her, and she's like, get away. She fell in love with Homer, who was her next door cellmate, and they're it. Like, whatever she and the other dude had, wherever, like it was one of few dimensions or something, because she hates him and more. Like, there were none actually where they showed that she liked him, because pretty soon she realized who he was, and it didn't matter where she met him. He was just bad. The same bad guy trying to over control everything. Like, oh my god, get off everybody. That's obnoxious, but so good. So they finally figure out how to escape, but he captures them. The doctor, what the hell was his name? Hap. Actually, it was like, well, it's his initials, Hap. I forget, Henry Aloysius something with a P. But everybody in every dimension, he's Hap, except for one. And then she remembered, because he knows he's Hap, right? He's brought everybody with him to this other dimension, and they haven't remembered themselves from the other one, because each time they go, they get amnesia. So it's just like even more confusing for these people. But when they finally escaped his prison, the first time, I should say. Yeah, he does it more than once. He captures them. He ends up taking them outside and literally has them like strung together on a rope, and is going to make them all do the movements so they can all go somewhere else together. And no one wants to be with this man. No one wants to do the movements for him, but he's got some way that he's coercing them into doing it. But Prairie just breaks free and says, I don't care, I'm not doing it, and just like gets free of the rope and jumps off a cliff. It's just like, you ain't making me do it. So she separated from everybody then for a while, but she did end up going back home. Like, she found her way somehow back from a long way, she found her way back home in the Midwest, mind you. She's not even on a coast, from Cuba. But, you know, in the story, it makes a lot more sense. So she gets home, and the parents once again want to lock her up because they're like, you wandered off and we lost you for 7 years. And so she was already like an adult when she left. So when she came back, it's like, but then, I didn't mention, well, she's different when she comes back. And so she really doesn't want to be restrained. I'll just tell you, she's not blind anymore because of something that happens while she's going through all those experiments and deaths under Hap's imprisonment. So when she comes back and she's able to get out of her house a few times, she ends up gravitating towards some kids because she ends up having to put a video on YouTube because she wants to go find Homer and the rest of her people that she was imprisoned with, because they became her family. She loved them. And so she wanted to go find where did they get scattered and get everybody together again. So she needed 5 people more other than herself to do the movements again. And she ended up getting like a bunch of high school kids and a teacher. And so you can imagine what kind of problems that's gonna ensue. The people in her town already think she's crazy, and when the kids start hanging around her, they think she's got them into a cult. They have no idea, and it took them all like some serious convincing to like buy into what she was saying, and that, you know, doing these movements could do all these things. And eventually she does it, and then Hap finds them and finds her, but then these kids all are like, one's a trans boy, and his parents like are so freaked out by the time that he's been spending with Prairie and these other kids, and some of them are not great kids. Like, one of them's a real problem. He's like, almost, if he wasn't white and rich, that kid would have been in jail. He was like worse than a bully. He was like a small Hap, except instead of using his intellect and things to sweet talk people, he would just get all mad and start beating everybody up, like a high school bully. Maladjusted kid, and just an odd bunch. And so and then the teacher ends up totally changing her mind about the kids and Prairie, and she goes through some very interesting changes herself and really like blossoms. But they end up going looking for Prairie because she goes missing again, and they finally figure out like where she is, and it's across the country, and they're only supposed to go for like a 6-hour drive, and then they end up needing to go further. But they were supposed to call their parents, all 5 of them, and no one called. So they get to like the whole other coast of the United States from the East Coast, and they're sitting down to eat, and all of a sudden they're on the TV news, and there's like an Amber Alert, and the teacher's like a kidnapper, and they're in a cult, and it ain't good. And she's like, nobody called their parents. So that was a light moment. And there's many scrapes, and there's a school shooting that the kids save the other kids doing the movements, and they didn't get to complete them because another kid ran up and tackled the gunman from behind, and so had just started firing into the cafeteria, and then he made the shooter like not fire into the kids and outside, but Prairie heard like, well, everyone becomes like psychic, and they get like attached to each other and can feel each other from a distance, and she could feel that they were upset and something was really wrong. And I think she got an idea that it was going to be a school shooting, so she was like booking it down there. And when the shot went wild, it went right into her chest. And this was before the cross-country race, because at this point they knew that if she died, she was going to come back and they would be able to find her eventually, and that's what happened. And then she went back, and it was like this whole split personality between her and Nina. Like, what it was is like she jumped out of the Prairie person's life and then jumped into the life of the Nina that just grew up as Nina and never became Prairie. So she had to adopt a Russian accent and like really quick learn how to behave like this other person. And people are telling her like, oh, you're this, that, and the other thing. And so it gave her sort of some guidelines. And then where was Nina? She was there at the same time. It's kind of weird to have, not exactly the same person, but, you know, very similar. Like, and they even talk about like how multiverses are like just a hair, like so close to each other, and you just don't even know it's there really, except like intellectually, or maybe you'll get a weird feeling because you bumped into it, like have your own personal Mandela effect or something. So and you know, the parents, they did such a good job on the show. I'm so bummed that there weren't more episodes, but like the parents, everybody was so fleshed out, so good, like very satisfying. So the parents, the woman Nancy, the mother, I had never seen this actor. I mean, maybe I'd seen her. I wasn't familiar though. Alice Krieg, I think her name is, Krige. But the husband, Scott Wilson, who played Abel, I've been seeing him for years in like he has not been a leading man, but he's been everything else, I think. So I wrote down the names so that I could sort of keep track of it. So when the last bit of the story is, in this world that she jumped into, not only does Prairie Nina exist, one of the kids, Buck, the trans boy, is Michelle in it, and she's missing. And so this is weird. Nina owns a house that was first built over native sacred lands for like sort of like a prophet of Delphi situation, sacred waters, sacred place. And then even though the medium wife was like, I don't think we should build here, the husband was like, yes, we should, and they built a house on it. And the house, it has crazy weird energy, and it also makes people hallucinate and freak out because the waters, there's like a big well of the sacred waters directly under the house, and it's seeping fumes. And when the house was built, it was in like the 1800s, so nobody knew from a fume, you know, and they were just all, just typical America. Just build on it anyway. Who cares if there's a risk? Go! Even though there's someone going, just, I think, but wait, you might want to, no, just do it first. Ask questions later. So, no one actually lives in the house because it makes you crazy. And there is a software developer And he is a cheapo, I guess, because instead of hiring consultants in R&D, he'll have a problem, and then he'll do a thing like a geocache, or like one of those weird puzzles, like you might see some weird flyer on a pole, and if you go look at it, it might tell you some things, like a scavenger hunt kind of a deal. So it was like that. And but it was a game, not a game, but it looked like a game because you can do it on your phone. But what it really was it was a puzzle. But if you solved the puzzle, you would end up at the house. And if you solved the puzzle, though, you were really solving the software designer's problem. So he didn't get affected by the house and the fumes in the game and get all weird and woo-woo. Oh, and Zendaya's in it. She actually is the one that she's like the Oracle in The Matrix, because at one point she's in the house and she's been sitting there for so long. It's weird to not think of her as a druggie, but the drug is the game. She's like in the house and has to do with the house. That's why she came up. She really doesn't have that big a role. But the girl that is like the girl that becomes a trans boy in the other dimension, they're both named Michelle, really, but in the other dimension, she's Buck, or she's he. And then in the Nina dimension, she's Michelle. And so the grandmother gets a private detective to look for Michelle. And he says, well, where is she? And she says, he's in the house. She's in the house. So I'm just going to interrupt myself here to talk about the private detective, because he is Kingsley Ben Adair. And I guess he played a pathologist called Marcus Summer in a British show called Vera. He was Colonel Ben Younger in Pinky Blinders, I don't even know what that is. I don't know how to pronounce it. I mean, I'm familiar with the show. The title, I'm tangling. And then he is starring in the new Bob Marley movie. So that's someone you will know from here. But he's the detective. And the thing about it is like, he gets through the house and he figures out the puzzle. And he's not like all high from the fumes. He keeps his wits about him. And through the house, he's able to see Michelle, or Buck, like on the other side of this particular window that you can look through. And some person in there said, oh, if you look through it, you're going to go nuts. Because some people went in the house and got nuts. But it's like, was it the fumes or was it the woo-woo? Was it the supernatural? Like, what was it? They don't ever really say. But the private detective sees Buck and is like, Michelle, come here. And for some reason, she knows that she's supposed to go to this guy. And one of the things that in the Nina world where Hap worked, he was again a psychiatrist or something like that, but he was doing the same kind of research on the same subject, except there was another division, and they were having people in that had worked with Hap, so I guess they did the dying thing, and he was teaching them to move and all of this, but this particular division was having them dream and then immediately wake up and tell everything they could remember, every detail about their dreams. And the dream people were kind of dreaming of the other multiverses. why did I start saying that? Now I don't remember, but at any rate, in the house, they dream of the house and the people that I'm talking about, like the old people it's crazy, from the original prison, and then in the prison, it's not even a prison, it's a mental hospital, but it might as well be a prison, especially the way Hap runs it, and goes and recruits patients and just keeps them forever and experiments on them. He's a bad guy. Anyway, so the dreamers start dreaming about, like, the dreams change over time, and I swear it's almost like women in their period, but all of these different people, their dreams all sort of started being about the same thing. And one of the things was they kept seeing this guy, and it happened enough times that they got a police sketch artist in there, and the guy they sketched was the private detective. So, and none of them had ever come across each other, so that's a weird thing. So anyway, he's in the house, and he's looking for this window, and he's looking out the window, and he sees Buck. So Michelle, on his side of that window, has long hair, and Buck has short hair. So eventually, when he gets in the house, he gets in and he finds Michelle with the long hair, the one from the Nina dimension, and the grandmother's sitting right there, and he's like, "What? I thought you said you needed me to find Michelle." And she said, "I do." And he goes, "She's right there." And he says, she goes, "This is Michelle, but this is not Michelle." And she goes, "You gotta go back in the house. I'm telling you." He's like, "But she looks like her." And she's like, "That's not her. Go back in the house and find her. You gotta hurry up." I don't know. I don't remember now what the time constraint was, but he had to go rush and find her. So he goes to the window, and what he actually is looking out on is a set. And Hap, the actor that plays Hap, is like the director or something, and he's all talking to somebody, and he's like, "I'm Jason Isaacs," which is the actor's name. And he's talking about the show in there. So this is what Kareem, the detective, looks out of the window and sees. And then he sees Buck come walking in with some woman. So he starts going, he doesn't really know her as Buck, know him as Buck. So he's all, Michelle. And she sees him, and I guess she recognized him from a dream, from the drawing. I don't remember that, like, coming up, but I could have missed it. Anyway, she sees him. She climbs up the set, and he pulls her through the window, and then the grandmother's like, "Michelle," and they have a hug, and so there's Michelle and Buck in the same dimension. And I feel like that's supposed to cause some kind of problem, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. And here's a good thing about it. Well, it's good to me. The end credits, I noticed, it's a Brad Pitt produced show. And I was like, "Oh, well, that's cool." And I don't know that it was because he had involvement in it that it was, like, so good. But I thought it was pretty quality show. Too bad nobody cared about this plot. But I did. I really enjoyed it. So I would highly recommend it. I couldn't even know who any of these people are. I don't know. Anyway, I will put a trailer in the information box about this show, so you can kind of check it out for your dang self if you're interested. And again, the cast, all I did was Google it. I don't know, like I said, I don't know any of these people's names hardly, just like two of them. Kingsley Ben-Adair, I didn't even know who he was until this show, and I just found out today he's in all this other stuff when I was prepping to do this. Well, Zendaya was everywhere for a minute, so you can't not know who she was, I guess. Why am I hemming and hawing about this? I'll put a trailer in. You can find out more if you want. Thank you and good night.